Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 10,000 Roads to Financial Independence. Today, I have Rocky Lalvani. Rocky started with nothing when his parents immigrated to the United States when he was 2 years old, and his parents were in their 40s. It was his parents' second time starting over in life as they moved to here to experience the American dream. In spite of a lot of struggles and his mom passing away when Rocky was 7, he has been able to achieve financial and life success. Rocky loves to share his journey and inspire others to achieve their dreams even faster. Welcome to our show, Rocky, today.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to join you.
Yeah, I love your bio because it just like fits into our show so perfectly in terms of what we're trying to do and our audience. And Rocky, we always start our show asking this question is, if you're thinking back into your childhood, can you share an experience or person that you feel like impacted who you are today as an entrepreneur?
So I think a big thing when I was growing up, when we came here, we didn't have a lot of money. And my parents would get together with their friends who also immigrated around the same time, and they would have money conversations. They would share how they were achieving success. And within a relatively short period of time, they kind of climbed the economic ladder. But whenever they got together, there were always money conversations about how much did you pay for that? People knew how much other people made. People were sharing information around money. And so I just grew up having conversations about money. I didn't realize until much, much later in life, most people don't talk about money.
Yeah.
That it's extremely taboo. And it's funny, looking back, I go, well, you know what? I have a Bachelor of Science in Economics and an MBA. They didn't teach me how to build wealth.
No.
And so I think just having that knowledge was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I love that because learning from osmosis is like the most natural way to kind of really, you retain the information. You may not use it for many years later. And Rocky, can you share with us a little bit about your life experience? It sounds very interesting. Sounds like pretty turbulence when at 7 you lost your mother. And, you and I'm an immigrant as well. My parents, moved to here in their 40s. So we see a lot of hard working from our parents. Can you share a little bit of your experience, your story, and how you become who you are today?
Yeah, so my dad was somewhat balanced because my mom passed away. He had to balance how do you raise a kid. Now, understand it's the early 70s, right? Single dad, recession. It was a very, very different world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he also made the choice that he was not going to work 24/7. He was going to be there as a parent as well. So I think I grew up somewhat balanced in that. Because of that, he was not able to achieve as much financial success as he could have. But as a kid, I was very entrepreneurial. I always wanted to make money and make a buck. So we used to live outside of New York City. I would go into New York City. I would buy stuff wholesale and I'd come back and sell it all to my friends. I'd mark it up 100%. And I was always rolling in the dough. Like I had a paper route. I was always doing something to generate money. And the funny thing is back then, PCs were just coming around and the first electronic spreadsheet was created, which used to be called VisiCalc.
Oh.
And I was going and teaching accountants how to go from paper ledger to spreadsheets.
Oh.
And then I didn't realize the value of that. I thought, when I graduate college, I'll create spreadsheets for people. But there was no internet. I couldn't figure out how to start a business. I couldn't figure out how to connect with people. And I didn't understand the power of the spreadsheet and all of the data that was in there. I always say good is the enemy of great. And we were all told, go to college, get a good job. So I went to college and I got a job and I had pretty good, financial success on that end.
Yeah.
And I built my wealth because I learned how to automate my savings and to invest it and to let it grow, took advantage of compounding. And then later in life, I'm like, what do I really want to do? I've achieved my financial goals. What do I really want to do? And part of it was giving back. So it was teaching finance. But I learned that people don't want to learn how to get rich slowly. They all want to learn how to get rich fast. That doesn't happen.
What is slowly? What is fast? Like
if I sell a course today that says get rich this weekend, everyone will buy it. Yeah. If I sell a course that says I'll make you a millionaire in 10 years, nobody will buy it.
Yeah, that's 10 years is still a very good time.
10 years is very good time. And you'd have to be very aggressive to do that For
Right.
most people, to become a millionaire takes longer than 10 years. But
Mhm.
honestly, the simplest way to become a millionaire in 15 years, which I think is doable, is go buy $1 million in real estate and pay off the loans in 15 years.
Right. Or have your
Now you're a
tenants pay them
millionaire.
off, right? Or have your tenants paying them
Your
off and still
tenants
have
are
the
going to pay them off,
cash flow.
correct? You're
Yes,
not going to pay them
exactly.
off.
Yeah.
But there are ways to do that. But the point is, it's hustle, it's work, and it's time. Most people want, the easy solution, and the easy solution doesn't work. And then I also came to realize that just as bad as people are with money, people own businesses, which means business owners are horrible with money. And that was an aha for me. I'm like, wait a minute, you're a business owner. Don't you understand the business of business?
Yeah.
And the answer is no, they don't. They love what they do and they hate looking at the finances, which makes sense. They're not accountants and they don't want to be.
So, what are some common mistakes that you see among the business owners that you coaches for, that they kind of the pitfalls that they falling through, so that making their business not sustainable?
So a couple of things. Business owners are like people. We all spend too much. So that is always an underlying problem, not realizing how much you have available to spend in your business. Younger or newer business owners are afraid to price their product at a rate that will cover their expenses, and they don't even know what that is. So a lot of times, they'll look around and they'll go, well, this is what the market's charging. It must be right. They don't actually put pen to paper to say, how much is my revenue? What are my costs? What are the labor inputs? And figuring out if your business is profitable. So if your business has a 10% profit margin, for every additional dollar you spend, you need to bring in $10 in revenue. And I don't think people make that connection, that you really have to do that kind of level to be able to do it. And that's why I think they overspend and they get in trouble.
And then so there's two kind of school of thoughts. I mean, there's the revenue, generating revenue, etc. Let's not talk about the startups in the Silicon Valley. There's a very entire different business model. And then there's like a making the profit, like a making sure you're driving by the profit. Now, some people will say, well, if you're not spending money in the business, then you're not growing faster enough. Right. And then the other will say, well, you should only be spending money that you have, which is really the personal finance, the Bible, the fundamental of personal finance. Let's not talk about that. So where are you at with these two kind of like school of thoughts in terms of, or is there maybe a happy marriages between the two?
There is probably a happy marriage, but the reality of the situation is we are told you have to spend money to make money. And I challenge that assumption, number one. Number two, rapid business growth requires great cash flow and capital reserves. Most people don't have the capital to grow, and that's the problem. Now, Silicon Valley is a little bit different, but even there, they take all their seed money and they spend it all ridiculously.
Right.
If they have a great idea, wonderful, but it's because their idea throws off a lot of free cash flow. Most businesses don't do that. If your business is not throwing off a lot of free cash flow, it is going to be very hard for you to cash flow growth. And that's why most businesses stumble. And they don't realize that even though their sales are growing and even though their profit is going up, they're actually bankrupting their business.
How is it that their profit is going up and they're still bankrupting their business?
You can't spend profit. You can only spend cash, right? So if I'm constantly growing, so take a business that's selling a product, right?
Yeah.
I sell a product. Let's say I'm an Amazon retailer, okay? So I'm going to sell a product. So I order $100,000 from China, right? Because that's usually where they get it from. It takes 8 weeks to get here. I get $100,000 out, 8 weeks to get here. Now I start selling it, right? So I still am out $100,000.
Yeah.
You start to sell it, and now you're selling through, and you're like, oh no, I need more. So now I send another $100,000 to China.
Yeah.
For more product, but I might not have recovered the first $100,000 yet.
Yeah.
And so this is where you get stuck in a cash flow trap. Even though it says you're profitable, you're spending your profit faster than you're making it. And that's the problem. But that doesn't necessarily show up in the accounting very easily. It's super hard to track cash in business and the movement and understanding what's going on. Most people are looking at it in the rearview mirror, which is what your accountant does.
Yeah.
Very few people are looking at it forward.
Oh, got it. So you think that by figuring out looking forward cash flow planning, to have a fiscally responsible cash planning, that is going to help you in terms of growing your business pretty fast and steadily.
Correct. If you want to grow fast, you're going to need to borrow money, and you need to make sure that your vendors are going to give you money to borrow. If they're not, or they're going to cut you off in the middle of your growth, then you're stuck. And that's what happens, is you get cut off in the middle of the growth cycle because they're like, whoa, you got a lot of debt going on. And even though you have sales, your cash is not coming through fast enough.
Gotcha. So kind of flipping into a model, I'm kind of like using Rocky's time to do my personal coaching here. I always do that. This is the secret of me doing that. Interestingly, so we do a real estate investments. Where do you see the challenge, like that parallelism that perhaps comes in from what you just mentioned over there on cash flow management, coming into like apartment investing or into real estate investing?
So real estate investing is a little bit different. The question is how quickly are you going to get to cash flow coming in? So if I come in and I buy an apartment today, and it's cash flowing tomorrow, right? Because there's already renters in place. Then the question is my cash flow covering my mortgage, my interest, my taxes? Is it covering vacancy? Is it covering repairs? Is it covering long-term capital improvements? If it's not cash flowing at purchase, you're in trouble. Not everyone does a good cash flow analysis on purchase. The second thing is, if you're buying a property and it's A class or B class, your margins are going to look smaller, but your rents are going to be more secure.
Right.
You start buying C class property and your first round tenants stop paying in 30 days, trash the apartment.
Right.
All of a sudden you're in big trouble.
Yeah, definitely. Unless, as we kind of talked about in the green rooms, unless if you have a capital reserve that you have actually created for that.
Correct. If you have a capital reserve you've created, and that could be part of funding the deal and creating the deal. So again, you would need to make sure that you did that. Too often, when I see real estate, everyone is always throwing out their best case scenarios.
Yeah.
When I do real estate, we look at our worst case scenarios, right? What could go wrong? Let's project for everything going wrong. Oh, look, I'm still making money with everything going wrong. This is a good deal. Right,
exactly. That serving the mortgages is kind of like a number one priority in that. And I love, have you read The Shoe Dogs by Phil Knight, the Nike owner?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, okay. So I want to just kind of give an example over there. I think precisely what you're talking about, the cash flow, getting people into trouble. This is the owner of Nike we're talking about. He kind of got himself into some trouble in his biography and talking about how he was over-ordering overseas Nike shoes, and then the customer order was increasing. So he was robbing Peter to pay Paul because with no cash flow in the bank, and then the bank stopped lending to him.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you. There's a real life story.
Right.
It happens all the time because bankers look at ratios. And when your ratios get out of whack, they freak out. Yeah. And you can have growth. Like Nike was growing. You can be profitable. They were profitable, but their cash flow was a problem. Yeah. And their debt ratios got out of whack.
Right, exactly. Until they got a capital backup, like a backup person from Japan. And then that becomes their infinite cash reserve. Still not cash flow. Yes. That's awesome. So Rocky, can you tell us a little bit about your methodologies, because you really are a proponent for living in harmony across health, wealth, time, relationship, and spiritual. So how does someone kind of come up with this balance? Like the balance.
So there's no such thing as balance, right? And because when you think of balance, you think everything has to be equal. And that is a problem. That's why we use the word harmony. So harmony is like music, right? When you listen to a song, different parts of the song get louder and softer, but they're all going on, right? So the drums are always going on, but sometimes they get louder, right? The singer is sometimes singing and sometimes not.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might have, the piano comes in and it goes out. Your life is like that. You've got to figure out how to bring these things all together in a way that kind of creates your music in a way that is appropriate for you. So let's look at it. Are you ignoring your health? Are you ignoring your spouse and kids? Are you spending too much? All of these different things you've got to kind of balance. And there are times where you might spend a little bit more. There might be times where you have to ignore your family because of work. But at the same point, you have to go back and say, okay, now I'm going to bring the family back up to the front. People forget to go back and bring the other parts back in. I can ignore my health for a week, but then next week I got to double down. Right.
Yeah. Ideally, it's a kind of, so you don't believe it's kind of like a slow study. You always do all 5 at the same equal rate. Instead, it's this kind of play in and out. I love that analogy. Yeah. By the way.
There are times where you have to sprint, and it's okay to sprint, but just make sure you have the other sprints to bring it all into alignment at the end and think it through. So it's never going to be perfect, but it's going to sound amazing when you get it all together.
Yeah, definitely. With a smile on your face. That's awesome. Now, do you have any advices for entrepreneurs who are kind of just starting out, or for people who, let me back up a little bit. Do you have advices, because you've been to corporation jobs before, like your full-time job before. So with that transitioning from full-time job to entrepreneurship, how did that happen to you? And then do you have advice for people who's kind of going through that journey right now?
So we planned for the transfer. It was not overnight. I knew 6 months in advance that I was going to do it.
Yeah.
I had all my ducks in the row.
Yeah.
We had a very long runway. In other words, I had enough cash to be able to get my business up and running without struggling, meaning zero income and dollars going out the door. We also watched our spending and got a little bit tighter with it so that, you tighten the belt at that moment and you go for it.
Yeah, and how did you know, like, because you mentioned there's 6 months earlier to when you make that leap. What are the preparation work that you lead up to it mentally and physically that 6 months from here, we're going to retire?
Oh, you know what? I actually planned it out. I'd probably been planning it for years. I just didn't know when it was going to happen. And then when I made the decision to make it happen, I decided to pick a date. Like, you got to pick a date, right? That's the hardest part. Throw your date down and say, this is when we're going to do it. For me, it just it coincided with some things that were going on in my life that 6 months would be perfect. And so that's where the 6 months came from.
And 6 months is not allowed to prepare. Like, but you didn't just use the 6 months income to do that. There's many checks that you had in play before.
Oh yeah, there was a whole
it.
bunch. There was years of stuff going on before that, testing, trying, learning. So all of that was going on before that. The 6 months was more just drawing the line in the sand. We already had the cash built up already. So it wasn't an issue because my whole time as a W-2 employee, I was saving. I was building wealth so that when the day came where they said goodbye to me, I knew I didn't have to worry.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to come a day where they may say goodbye to you. Prepare for it.
Yeah, it's whether on their terms or your term. And
Correct.
How did you build your wealth?
So it is the basic, simple thing of automating savings and allowing it to compound over time. And you just keep upping the savings rate and you just allow the compounding to do its job and you will build wealth. It's a simple math formula that works.
Yeah. And how long did that take you to that point when you kind of think about you first start doing automating of saving?
Oh, I started automating my savings when I got my first job out of college.
Nice.
Like I literally set up multiple automated savings streams.
Yeah.
And then every year I would just up them little by little. And so I was doing this forever. And that's why it allowed me to do that. And you can start small and just make teeny steps. Even doing small changes every year over a period of time, you will get to financial success. It's proven, but it takes time and you have to be diligent. And for some reason, people don't want a proven, simple path to success. They all want something fancy, complicated, and it's crazy.
I think in this information time, everybody is expecting everything to be done like instantaneously. I think that has technology has something to do with that. Tell us a little bit about your first year of entrepreneurship. What does that look like for you? The struggle, the challenges, and the growth.
Yeah, we hit a lot. I started when I left, I had a handful of clients, and probably 6 months out, I lost a handful of clients. Then
Why?
COVID hit, right? And so it was literally overnight. I had to change the way I did business in some senses. I was doing a lot of local networking. And all of that dried up immediately. All the people who I was talking to were now so busy doing PPP loans and all of that. And then the business owners were freaking out because they didn't know what was happening. So I literally pivoted to online. And the only people showing up online were the people who were making changes. So that allowed me to kind of go online and build. And the first year was a struggle. The second year, little by little, things started to pick up. And by the end of the second year, I hit my goals for what I wanted for my business and things were going well. But you just keep showing up and doing the work. You've got to be out marketing and selling all the time. Like that is what this is. Everything is marketing and sales. And if you're not comfortable with that, or you're going to hand that off to somebody else, it's going to get very expensive very fast.
Yeah, definitely. So handing the marketing off to someone else. Now, would you have the same advice? Because obviously when you first started out, you're kind of in this cash crunch. If you especially bootstrapped your whole business, you don't have rich investors like Silicon Valley startups, then try to burn the cash. But then there's a moment where you know that you kind of made it, whether it's the target revenue or target cash flow. What is it, the metrics for you, the KPIs for you? Where you're like, this is something that I measure and then I've hit it, and then now we're kind of getting into more of we can spend some cash on that.
So the safe way to do this for most people is if you're in a W-2 job and you can't build savings and you don't have a lot of runway and you can't cut your expenses, it's time to sprint. So you're going to do both side by side, and maybe you're working 80 hours a week for 6 or 8 months. But the moment your side business pay overtakes your business, your W-2 wages, and you see longevity, that's when you make the switch. So that's the safe way to do it. If you don't have the funding to cover it. Now, if you're married and you have a spouse, maybe you can live off of your spouse's income and make the leap during that.
And then maybe actually could potentially have more tax advantages when you do that. By turning into real estate professionals and using depreciation to offset some of that stuff.
And the other thing is maybe you can find somebody to be your first client. So some people will leave a W-2 job and they will go start a business servicing their previous employer. So then you're walking away into a guaranteed contract.
Yeah, that's kind of safe. So after a couple years of the first year startups, now a lot of business fail. Like I've heard some stats like 90% restaurant fails. That's small business, obviously. I don't know what the stats is. 100% of small business fail when they first started in the first year. And what would you say the golden nuggets you got other than working every day, consistently delivering one step at a time? What are some kind of breakthrough moments for you where you feel like, oh, I'm grinding, no, going nowhere. And then all of a sudden you're like, aha, like, I hit a stride. Yeah.
So I think the first thing is, does the world want what you have to offer? And are they willing to pay for it? So when I was doing the personal financial coaching, the world really, it was a very difficult place to break into. And it was a struggle to get into that space. So the world needs it. They're just not willing to pay for it. Whereas on the business side, they need it and they're willing to pay for it. The second thing I think for a lot of business owners is they don't understand their numbers. They've never done the math. You really have to do the math and know that it's true and shop it around to some people and say, is this possible? Is this doable in the industry? Not to your friends who know nothing about business, right? Go to people who are successful and say, are my numbers correct? Is this a viable market? Is this true? And then I think you have a lot more confidence that it'll work.
And then, so you summarized it as in pivoting. In terms of like pivoting, sometimes you have to pivot from customer to business to customer to business, whatever, the peer-to-peer. And then also, now how do you kind of do this rapidly and then be able to kind of discover that sooner? Because if you discover that, like, oh, this is not the right target audience, let me try this other stuff. Or what are some of the methods you would recommend to kind of discover these a little bit more rapidly?
So I think the way to do it rapidly is don't build it. Go out and ask people, hey, I'm offering this service. Are you interested? And if nobody's biting, then you don't have a product.
Right.
If people are like, I'll take it. And you're like, well, it'll be 3 months to deliver. They're like, I don't care. Here's the money. You know you have the right product or service.
Yeah. So pre-sell, the minimum viable product is what you should be looking at.
Yes.
Yeah. And then how do you then find out what people's needs are? Because this is the tricky part, right? Where people tell you like, oh, I need this, I need that, but oftentimes that's not what they needed. So what is the journey to kind of find out what they truly needed?
So, well, the first thing is just to ask them, how much are you willing to spend?
Yeah.
Right? I need
question
this.
number one.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you got that, what would be the impact to your business? Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to solve this problem? And if it's not a 10, they don't really care. It's just an excuse. And then you ask for money. Money, you know, it's going to tell you the truth. You want to solve this problem? I can solve this problem. It's 10 grand.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, but I'll think about it. Well, you got your real answer, right?
Yeah, definitely. And now switch gear a little bit. These are great little nuggets and lessons. I definitely think this episode is something that our audience should be going back and re-listening to, a lot of these little gold nuggets. You know, like switching gear a little bit more, Rocky, like you have a website called a richersoul.com. And we're going to put the show notes over here. But on your website, tell me a little bit more about, you know, you have real estate episodes, you have basically the life beyond money, lives in harmony across healthy wealth, time, relationship, and spiritual, like a podcast. I'm guessing these are podcasts that you interview people on. Can you tell us a little bit about what this show is about and, you know, what kind of guests are on there?
Yeah. So first and foremost, everybody needs a life plan. Do you know what % of people have a life plan written down?
1%. I don't know.
Yeah, you got it. 1%, right?
Are they happen to be the 1% rich people?
If you have not defined what you want, your mind chatter will drive you crazy. You will get distracted. You are in the drift. First and foremost, define what you want. Once you define what you want, it's so much easier to achieve it. Second thing is having the right mindsets. Understanding, you know, the abundance mindset, the growth mindset, that it's going to take time, that you can build it. And then go into each of these areas and start learning. So let's take health, right? Here are the things about health that nobody talks about or that we are misled on or we don't follow. The two worst things you can put in your body are sugar and vegetable oil, okay?
I didn't know 90%
of what you eat is sugar and vegetable oil, right?
Yes.
They are not designed for human consumption, but they are cheap and they are easy to add to products that taste so yummy and hook you.
Yeah.
Right? This is why America is so fat.
Yeah.
You got to you literally have to shop the outside of the store. Fresh vegetables, fresh meats. We've been told that bacon is bad. I eat bacon all the time. It's very healthy. My cholesterol numbers are phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think we have the wrong information about health. And then you have to go actually use your body. If you don't use your body, it rusts. So we go deep into what does it really mean to be healthy? So like I've had a guest on, his tagline is, I help people who think they're healthy. really get healthy. So, people think they're healthy, but it's not really true. So digging further into that, we get people on to really like the one thing that everyone forgets is your most precious asset is time. And so how do you best manage your time? How do you employ ways to get more done than everybody else does and get it down? So we do a lot of time management. Relationships, like what are you doing to build the appropriate relationships? You're the average of the 5 people around you. Who are you surrounding yourself with? How are you intentionally building relationships? Spirituality, what's your connection to this universe? I think there's a lot that we misunderstand in the spiritual area, and science is finally catching up, and we're starting to really understand how everything kind of comes together in doing that. So having good spiritual practices, and then of course having your money down, right? Knowing how that comes together, and then how do all of these weave together and work for you? So we try and find people who are looking for the real answers, not the commercial answers. So like, if you looked at money, it's all the people you see who are standing in front of the Lamborghini and the mansion and the plane. It's all fake. I don't want those people. I want the real people in all of these different areas who can show you how to get more done for less and how you can truly enjoy your life.
I think the happiness is not defined by material things. It's a lot about the mindset, but it's also not purely defined by relationships. I guess it is relationships, even including relationships to yourself. I think it's a very, very important one.
We do talk about the reflection in the mirror. That is your number one enemy.
But also your number one friend, right? So talk about the reflection in the mirror. Like, how do you condition your mindset? As an entrepreneur, you do day in, day out. Sometimes you can be working, it'd be kidding ourselves to say, oh, we work only like 3 hours at a time, and maybe at some point when your system is set up. But most likely in your first year, you'd probably be working 12, 15 hours a day. So how do you condition your mindset so that you're actually motivated to kind of go do each little step you mentioned before to build a success that way?
So I think that starts with a healthy body, right? Because if your body's not healthy, then your mind can't be healthy. And so appropriately fueling and building a healthy body, and then creating the time and the space to have a little bit of peace so you can actually think about what's going on in life and meditate and just have that calmness that otherwise you're running frenetically and you're bouncing off the walls, getting nothing done.
Yep. And then what is your routine like? Your personal routine?
So I roll out of bed usually before 6 a.m., right? I start my day with a little bit of religious material, gratitude, and then I roll out of bed, I go work out. And so that takes a while. I come back from that and then, shower, get ready. Occasionally I'll turn the shower cold, wake yourself up. After that, then again, a little bit more of mindset reading. So I like to read a lot of Stoic stuff, religious stuff, a little bit of meditation and breathing, and working on just, if you just do a couple of deep breaths, it really centers and calms your body and your physical system. And then I get to work. So that's 3 hours later. So I'm spending 3 hours of my day before I walk into my office.
Yeah. So you're well conditioned and you're 100%. And then some people always say the 20-80 rule. It's about prioritization. Do you also practice that?
Absolutely. So if you think about it, if 20% gets you 80%, 40% gets you 96%, get rid of the other 4%. And you have 60% of your time back.
Yeah.
Which means if you did another 40%, your results are now 192%, and you still have 20% capacity. Don't fill the last 20% capacity.
Right.
Make sure you have space in your calendar to breathe.
That's important.
For life happens. If there's no space, it becomes difficult. If there's space in your calendar, it becomes easy.
Gotcha. And what is your prioritization principle? I'm always curious about how other people make a decision. So why is it 20% or 80%? There's a framework of a thoughts in that to say, okay, this is important, this is not important, and how do you actually prioritize it?
So it depends on the time of life. My kids are now just left to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, they were number one priority,
Mm-hmm.
right? I worked on that. Going to the gym and my health, top priority,
Mm-hmm.
right? Eating well, top priority. Having time to be with my wife, top priority. None of those were money, were they? No. Didn't come up yet.
No, but money helps. Money helps.
Money helps, right?
Yes.
And then it comes down to, how do I generate income, right? But then also making sure that I manage my time so that I am not wasting time and I'm focused.
That's
and
awesome.
Then everything else can kind of fill in after that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Rocky, before we kind of leave the show over here, how does people get in contact with you?
So there's two websites. There's the Richer Soul, which we've talked about. If you're a business owner, it's profitcomesfirst.com. Both of those websites have links where you can email me from there. And so it's easy to be able to do that. And both of them are podcasts. So wherever you listen to your podcasts, you will find either the Profit Answer Man or Richer Soul. And you can hear me talk about this in much more depth. We've got hundreds of episodes.
I would definitely tune in as well. And we'll put that in the show notes as well over here. Now, Rocky, like you talked about, you have kids. So kind of bringing the full cycle back in here. What are you doing to kind of teach your kids financial independence and entrepreneurship to kind of condition them for the future? Yeah.
So we knew that we were going to have wealth, and we knew we were going to grow up wealthy. And we also know that most wealthy people spoil their kids, and we didn't want to do that. So we intentionally started giving them money at a young age, and then we started giving them their own expenses. In other words, I'm not going to buy you all this stuff. You now have your own money, and we taught them how to use money. We gave them opportunities to earn more money, and we expose them to a lot of things that most kids are not exposed to. So we did a bit of homeschooling as well, so that they had the time freedom to be able to do that. But my daughter got to go see Tony Robbins and Brendan Burchard and Seth Godin in high school. So she was exposed to leaders. My son's a tech kid, so he got to go build robots and work with people and meet people in the engineering space to be able to do that. So we found the opportunities for them to not only learn the skills of money by giving them money, but then learn the skills of how do you provide value and where are your skills that kind of help the world, and how do you find that fit for you? So it was just giving them exposure and opportunity to do things, and we did not limit them. Too often, I think kids are limited where they're stuck in school and sports, neither of which is going to make 99% of them rich.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And then did you intentionally create any adversities for them? Because oftentimes I have two young kids, so I'm always worried about like you said, don't spoil them. But if they know they're wealthy, they're so then I start thinking, could they be not as sharp-minded? So how do you kind of create some adversity, and should you create adversities for them?
Absolutely, adversity. You really should create adversity. We have a saying in our house: your parents are rich, you're poor. You're going to have to figure this out. We'll give you opportunity, and we'll show you how. By giving my kids money at a young age, when we went to the store, it was no longer, Daddy, can I have this? It was like, you have your own money. Buy what you want. Live within a budget. We taught them how to save. We taught them how to comparison shop. We taught them how to negotiate. So we taught them life skills, and we showed them, like we would watch commercials on TV. I'm like, you have that toy. Is it that cool? And they're like, no. I go, that person on that commercial wants your money. Are you going to give it to them, or are you going to hold on to it? Either you're going to be wealthy or they are. Your choice. And so they learn that from a very, very young age.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to start telling my daughter that, hey, you're gonna buy this, nail stamps, and you're gonna make
Yeah.
that person rich, or you're gonna be rich. So
Well, and they can buy that stuff, but make them pay for it out of their own money. You will be
yeah.
shocked if it's their money, they don't spend it like it their parents' money.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes the employees are like that too. They're like our
Oh,
kids. Yes.
employees are horrible with that. Your employees they're almost incentivized to spend your money,
Yeah.
right? Nobody incentivizes not to spend company money.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And that's one thing we talk about. Teach your employees not to spend money.
Right. How does that hit their bottom lines as well? I
Mm-hmm.
think that's important. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rocky, for your time. I learned a lot even during our episode. Would definitely check out your podcast on the Richer Soul and the other website as well. And we'll put these websites in our show notes as well. Thank you so much for your time with us today, Rocky.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast to be here.
Yeah. Now we wrapped up another episode of 10,000 Roads to Financial Independence.